Hello, everyone. There you go. I took a little break from videos earlier, and now my computer wants to suddenly screw up. So this is back into the Pacific War. Australia's Pearl. Let's try that again. Australia's Pearl Harbor. Pacific. Okay, maybe now I can speak. Australia's Pearl Harbor. Oh my goodness, am I having strokes? What's happening here? Australia's Pearl Harbor, Pacific War 23. Never imagined that'd be so difficult. Okay, I'm turning the closed captions off because I don't remember if I need them for these or not, but let's do it. Yeah, why would it need to start? There you go.
The Imperial Japanese Navy shocked the world when it consolidated most of its aircraft carriers into a striking force in 1941 and surprise attacked Pearl Harbor. Something that is not as well known is that the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor would be replicated against Darwin, Australia by some of the same warships and aviators. This was the dawn of the aircraft carrier as the pinnacle of modern warfare, and the IJN were making full use of their carrier fleet. Out of all their carriers to rain terror upon the Allies, one began the war as a flagship. This episode is about the IJN carrier Akagi. You've probably got a grip of the basics of strategy after all this coverage of these campaigns, so we invite you. The Akagi, meaning Red Castle, was named after Mount Akagi, a dormant volcano in the Gunma Prefecture. Akagi was laid down as an Amagi-class battle cruiser at Kure, Japan on December 6, 1920. Her construction was halted, however, when Japan was forced to sign the Washington Naval Treaty on February 6, 1922. The treaty was signed amongst the major allies of World War I, who agreed to prevent an arms race by limiting naval construction. The treaty limited the construction of battleships, battle cruisers, and aircraft carriers by all signatories. It heavily favored nations such as the United States and Great Britain, whose industrial power would allow them to win longer wars, while a nation like Japan was disadvantaged. Regardless, the treaty authorized conversion of 2 battleships or battlecruiser hulls into aircraft carriers of up to 33,000 long tons displacement. The IJN decided, following the launch of its first aircraft carrier, Hosho, to construct 2 larger and faster carriers for operations with major fleet units. The incomplete hulls of Amagi and Akagi were selected to undergo such conversion, and over 90 million yen from the Diet was given for the task. The construction of Akagi as an aircraft carrier began on November 19, 1923, and was the second carrier to enter the service of the IJN. The Akagi had 3 superimposed flight decks, a very unique feature only found in the Akagi and the Kaga. Her second
3 flight decks. Interesting. Interesting. Stupid question. Clearly, you're not going to fly and land. You're not going to land here. You're not going to land here. So this must be the main landing strip. Now I see this right here. Is this where it lowers you? Wow, that's interesting. Sorry, I'm admiring. I'm like looking at potential. Like, will you store your crafts underneath here, which is, you know, it's kind of no different than an aircraft carrier today. The planes can be on top, but they do lower them. You know, storms are coming or whatever. I just never. I know that this is a computer animated thing, but I'll have to look up to see a picture of, if there is one, of what it looked like. Because I could see this being landing. This is what confuses me. This little one here. I don't know how much. Like, I don't understand the concept of this one, because you're not flying off of this. That's really interesting. That's really cool.
Flight deck's use was questionable, as it was so short that it could only load some light aircraft. Its upper flight deck sloped slightly from amidship towards the bow and stern to assist landings and takeoffs for underpowered aircraft of the 1920s. Her total capacity was 60 aircraft. She carried dedicated anti-aircraft armaments of 6 twin 45 caliber 12cm 10th year type guns, 3 mounts per side. Her waterline armoured belt was 152mm, and the upper part of her torpedo bulge was 102mm of armour. Her deck armour was 79mm, and all of her armour was done in a way to stabilise her increased topside heavy weight. She had 4 Gihon-geared steam turbines that produced a total of 131,000 shaft horsepower. She underwent extensive refitting from 1935 to 1938 at the Sasebo Naval Arsenal. Her 3 flight decks were consolidated into a single enlarged flight deck. This extended the hangars forward, removed the flying off decks, and increased aircraft capacity. She also boasted an island superstructure on her port side. This made the Akagi the first Japanese carrier with a modern large flight deck, and the operational experience aboard her forged Japanese naval air power doctrine. Her modernization process would be completed on August 21, 1938. The Akagi had a complement totaling 1,630 crew members. The Akagi joined the combined fleet in August 1927, assigned to the 1st Carrier Division upon its formation on April 1, 1928, serving as the division's flagship under Rear Admiral Sankichi Takahashi. From December 10, 1928 to November 1, 1929, the ship was captained by Isoroku Yamamoto. In 1938, after being modernized, she embarked for southern Chinese waters, carrying 12 Mitsubishi A5M Claudes, 19 Aichi D1A Suzis, and 35 Yokosuka B4Y Jeans. From January 30th to February 19th, 1939, she supported ground operations, including attacks on Guilin and Liuzhou. She also provided air cover for the invasion force landing on Samha Bay, and went on to support operations in central China between March 27th and April 2nd, 1940. The Japanese experiences in China helped develop the IJN's carrier doctrine. One lesson learnt in China was the importance of concentration and mass in projecting naval air power ashore. This led to the formation of the 1st Air Fleet, or Kidobutai, in April of 1941, which combined all of its fleet carriers under a single command. The Akagi and the Kaga were assigned to the 1st Carrier Division of the new carrier fleet. When multiple carrier divisions operated together, the division's air groups combined. This doctrine of combined, massed carrier-based air attack groups was the most advanced of its kind in the world. While this was a revolutionary offensive carrier concept, it also suffered from what Mark Peattie described as a glass jaw. It could throw a punch, but it couldn't take one. This was because Japanese carrier anti-aircraft guns and associated fire control systems had significant design flaws that limited their effectiveness. The Akagi's anti-aircraft guns were older, fired slowly, and were positioned very poorly on the port and starboard sides of the ship, 20 or so feet below the flight deck. Therefore, they could only fire at targets on the same side of the ship. This was all coupled with too few combat air patrol fighters and an inadequate early warning system.
So basically, if you're coming in on a side, they can fire at you. You get overhead where you can maybe drop some bombs, and there's really no defense for them to track you. They can only track so far, which makes sense because it would be difficult to put big weapons up here for fear that if one of your pilots comes in and and lands. Their tires hit and skids for whatever reason. I don't know how these things work. I'm just imagine with me, and turns and hits one of those, and if it explodes, just the potential damage that it could do, because you have one explosion. If you have a ton of ammunition nearby, and then that could trigger a chain reaction where it just, it blows out a big section, or you all understand what I'm saying. I don't know if you've picked this up. Not a military guy, so military people are probably listening to this going, "No, dummy, that's not how it works." I don't know, but my imagination says it's possible, So I can't silence that. So when these 5 planes got together, it was 65 planes. So you're talking what? Was it? I'll say 60, because I don't know if it was 65. But if it's 60, you got 300. So you could have a potential 325. And that is a lot of aircraft. Now, stupid question. There's got to be some kind of sign. Well, no, never mind. I was going to say there's got to be some kind of sign to where if you take off and you fight and you're coming back, you don't just land on the wrong one. Even though they look identical, I'm sure there's differences in them, in some kind of a marking. But if you've been on the same ship for so long, I'm sure you've just grown accustomed to kind of what it looks like. None of this matters, but just asking. I just found the placing of those guns, which, this is how stupid I am. When I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's pretty good." And then when you see the radius of where it can fire, it's like, "Oh yeah, no, that is all you got to do is come in high enough." And it also depends on being accurate enough once you get overhead. And something I didn't think of when I said that, another ship that's a little bit of ways away, you may be overhead this ship, but that ship still has you on its side where it can shoot at you. So you're kind of covered, but at the same time you're not.
Major moment would be the attack on Pearl Harbor. She assembled with the rest of the 1st Air Fleet at Hitakapu Bay in the Kuril Islands and departed on November 26th for Hawaii. Commanded by Captain Kiichi Hasegawa, the Akagi was Vice Admiral Choichi Nagamo's flagship for the operation. From a position of 230 nautical miles north of Oahu, the Akagi launched 2 waves of aircraft on the morning of December 7, 1941. Her first wave of 27 Kates torpedoed battleships Oklahoma, West Virginia, and California, while 9 of her Zeros attacked Hickam Field. During her second wave, 18 Vals bombed battleships Maryland and Pennsylvania, the light cruiser Raleigh, the destroyer Shaw, and fleet oiler Neosho, while 9 Zeros attacked US airfields. The Akagi lost 1 Zero and 4 Vals during the attack. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Akagi made her way to Truk on January 14th. She, along with the 1st and 5th Carrier Divisions, was assigned to Operation R alongside 7 cruisers, 14 destroyers, and numerous submarines and auxiliary vessels. Under the command of Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue, Operation R targeted New Britain and New Ireland. This included the invasion of Rabaul, which was important to the Japanese because of its proximity to Truk Base in the Caroline Islands. The capture of New Britain would offer the Japanese a deep-water harbour and airfield to provide protection for Truk and thwart Allied lines of communication between the US and Australia. On January 20th, the Akagi contributed 20 Kates and 9 Zeros for the initial 100 carrier aircraft attack on Rabaul. Her aircraft landed 3 bombs on the Norwegian cargo vessel Herstein, causing a fire and drift. The intense air attacks destroyed the Australian coastal artillery. On January 21st, the Akagi contributed 9 Zeros and 18 Vals when carrier aircraft began to attack Allied positions on Kavieng. On January 22nd, the Akagi contributed 18 Vals and 6 Zeros to a combined force of 45 aircraft to attack Rabaul again. Once the aircraft had departed, the wounded Australian forces quickly destroyed their remaining airfields and began a withdrawal. The carrier force supported Japanese landings of 3,000 to 4,000 troops just off New Ireland, quickly capturing the main town of Kavieng unopposed. The following night, the invasion force sent 5,000 troops of the 144th Infantry to New Britain. Rabaul was captured, and the carriers provided air cover throughout the invasion until January 27th, when they departed for Truk. Rabaul became the largest Japanese base in New Guinea and their linchpin defense for the region. The Akagi, Kaga and Suikaku sortied in search of US naval forces raiding the Marshall and Gilbert Islands on February 1, 1942. Task Force 17, commanded by Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, attacked Jaluit, Mili and Makin Islands. They inflicted moderate damage to Japanese naval installations on the islands and destroyed 3 aircraft. Task Force 8, commanded by William Halsey Jr., attacked Kwajalein, Wotje and Taroa. They inflicted light to moderate damage on the naval garrisons on the islands, sank 3 small warships, including the light cruiser Katroi, and over 15 Japanese aircraft. The IJN carriers were unable to track the US task forces and were quickly recalled for a new mission. By mid-February 1942, the Japanese had captured Ambon, Celebes and Borneo. Landings on Timor were scheduled for February 20th, and an invasion of Java was planned to take place shortly after. In order to protect these landings from Allied interference, the Japanese needed to neutralize Darwin. Darwin, Australia was the key to the South Pacific air ferry routes. During the outbreak of the Pacific War, several Australian Army and RAAF units stationed in Darwin were sent to strengthen defences in the Dutch East Indies, such as at Ambon and Timor. By mid-February 1942, Darwin had become an important Allied base for the defence of the Dutch East Indies. Yet despite its strategic importance, the city was poorly defended. It held 16 QF 3.7-inch AA guns and 2 3-inch AA guns to counter high-altitude aircraft. It also had Lewis guns for use against low-flying aircraft. The air forces stationed there comprised the No. 12 Squadron, equipped with CAC Wirraway Advanced Trainers, and the No. 13 Squadron, which had Lockheed Hudson light bombers. They were also backed up by 9 Lockheed Hudsons arriving from the No. 2 and No. 13 Squadrons on February 19th, after the evacuation of Timor. In addition to the Australian forces, 10 USAAF Curtiss P-90 Warhawks were passing through Darwin en route to Java the day she would be attacked. A total of 65 Allied warships and merchant vessels were in Darwin Harbour. The Japanese fleet was commanded by Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagamo and led by the Kido Butai. The force comprised 188 aircraft from the Akagi, Kaga, Hiryu and Soyu, which all had participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor. In addition to their aircraft were 34 land-based bombers, 27 Nels from Ambon and 27 Bettys from the Celebes. The fleet was supported by 2 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, 7 destroyers and 3 submarines. This would be the first enemy attack on Australian soil in the history of the Commonwealth of Australia, and is often described as Australia's Pearl Harbor. The IJN carriers launched 188 aircraft at 8:45 am on February 19th, including 81 Kates, 71 Vals and 36 Zeros. The Akagi contributed 18 Kates, 18 Vals and 9 Zeros. The first wave was led by Commander Mitsuo Fujita, who had commanded the first wave of the Pearl Harbor attack. There was no functional radar to provide Darwin early warning, but at 9:35 am, an Australian coast watcher, Father McGrath of the Sacred Heart mission on Bathurst Island, saw the aircraft and sent a pedal radio signal to Darwin. The message was relayed to the RAAF by 9:37 am, but no general alarm was raised until 10 am, as the RAAF officers assumed it was just USAAF P-40s returning to Darwin. Petty Officer Yoshikazu Nagahama was flying a Zero when he was separated from his squadron. He arrived over Darwin early and alone. He engaged 5 P-40s, single-handedly shooting down 4 of them. At 9:58 am, the Japanese aircraft began to arrive over Darwin, and the HMAS Gunbar was the first ship to be attacked, strafed by several Zeros. The air raid sirens began as the Japanese bombers commenced dive bombing and level bombing attacks on the ships in the harbour. In 30 minutes, the first wave of Japanese bombers sank 3 warships, 6 merchant ships, and damaged 10 other vessels. The US destroyer Perry sank in minutes, killing 80 of her crew. The large US transport Meigs sank, killing 2 people, and the Australian ship Neptuna, loaded with explosives, was hit, causing a terrible explosion, killing 45 of her crew and the ship's captain, William Mitchie. Just before the attack, 70 waterside workers had been unloading the Neptuna and Barossa on the long pier that was hit, blowing many of them into the water and burning oil. 21 of these workers are known to have died from the bombs or in the water. The town's post office was hit, killing 9 civilians. All but 1 of the remaining P-40s were destroyed on the ground at RAAF Darwin. The remaining P-40, flown by First Lieutenant Robert Ostreicher, was airborne throughout the first attack, and managed to shoot down 1 Val and damage another. The Japanese bombed and strafed the base and civil airfield, alongside the town's army barracks and oil store, causing severe damage. The first wave lost up to 5 aircraft and 3 crew members, while 34 aircraft were damaged. At 10:10 am, the bombers began to make their return to their carriers when they noticed 2 Philippine-registered freighters lying outside the port, the Florence D and the Don Isidro. The second wave was made up of 54 land-based bombers, consisting of 27 Mitsubishi G3Ms and 27 G4Ms, which arrived over Darwin as its sirens rang again at 11:58 am upon sight of the bombers. The second wave separated into 2 groups, flying at 18,000 feet. One bombed the RAAF base from the southwest, while the other approached from the northeast. They both arrived over the base simultaneously, dropping their bombs, turning around, and bombing a second time. Due to defective fuses, the Australian heavy anti-aircraft flak guns were unable to score any significant hits on the high-flying aircraft. All the bombers made a clean getaway around 12:20 p.m. The damage inflicted on the RAAF base was extensive, but casualties were light. 6 Lockheed Hudsons, 2 P-40s, and a B-24 were destroyed, and 6 RAAF personnel were killed at the RAAF base. The IJN carriers launched a...
The destruction of property is one thing, but only 6 people dying. That's pretty lucky considering you had, 180 planes? 188 planes on a bombing run. I don't remember how many they said went over there, but to only have lost 6 on that particular bombing, that's either there was not a lot of people there, they were hiding because it was the second run, or you just got lucky. I'm going to say they were probably hiding. It was the sirens going off, but still, that's good.
Small number of
not good for the 6 people. R.I.P. to them. But I mean, it's good that you only lost 6 considering. I don't want people to get that misconstrued. Was he happy that 6 people died? No, I wasn't.
During the afternoon to attack the Florence D and Don Isidro, which had been noticed by the first wave coming back. The Don Isidro was rapidly sunk north of Melville Island, with 11 of her 84 crew killed. The dive bombers sank Florence D off Bathurst Island, killing 4 of her crew. The bombing of Darwin caused the available surface shipment support efforts to Java and the Philippines to be effectively sealed off for the Allies. 7 of 11 above-ground oil storage tanks located on Stokes Hill were destroyed. Up to an estimated 236 people were killed, with 300 to 400 wounded. 30 aircraft were destroyed, with 11 ships sunk, 3 run aground, and 25 damaged. Over 681 bombs, weighing a total of 251,500 pounds, were dropped by 205 bombers, which exceeded the tonnage dropped on Pearl Harbor. The Japanese lost as few as 5 aircraft, with 34 aircraft damaged. The loss of life at Pearl Harbor was greater, at around 2,400 deaths, compared to the estimated 236 for Darwin. As the attack leader, Commander Mitsuo Fujita said about using such an overwhelming force against such a soft target, "It was hardly worthy of us. If ever a sledgehammer was used to crack an egg, it was then." The IJN scored another major victory. But these victories would contribute to what many historians called victory disease, and the outcome will be seen later on in the Battle of Midway. Thanks to Call of War for sponsoring this video. Click our link in the description to get an exclusive gift, 13,000 gold and...
Wow. And I'm saying, wow, good video, but I feel like I was just like here a little bit ago. That went fast. So there were more deaths at Pearl Harbor, which makes sense. They had, you know, ships kind of, I want to say dry dock, but they were working on them. They were all there. But they dropped a lot more. The sledgehammer and an egg, I get it, but, you know, Australia kind of is in Japan's backyard, so to speak. So I can, and well, you know, Hawaii is too. So I understand, you know, clearly you get why they went for Hawaii, but I also understand why they went for Australia, because they were also getting down in the Indonesia area. So I get it. Was, what am I trying to say? Oh, why am I asking you? You have no idea. Was New Zealand involved in World War II at all? I would guess if they were, the country itself may not have been, I don't know, but I'm guessing that there probably were people who joined the Australian Army. It's a side question. I really, you know, don't need an answer, because I will forget about it just as soon as this video's over. Okay, so I did another one of these. I would like to do more, a little more regularly, but it's with requests that people have. They really don't request these videos, but I do like them. I want to keep going on them because they're still making them. I think they're up to like 70 something. All right, we're gonna end this here. You can donate to the channel through the thanks button. All donations are appreciated. Subscribe, that helps. Give a thumbs up if you don't want to donate because you know you don't think I'm worth it. I understand, but give a thumbs up. That does help. It helps on the opposite end. It tells YouTube that I'm not a piece of garbage, and YouTube frequently asks me, "Why are you still doing this, man?" And I'm just like, "I don't know." And they're like, "People don't like you. They're not giving enough thumbs up." So you can help YouTube by doing that. And if you want to give a thumbs down, then you're one of those people. You're the problem. So have a good day. Have a good night.